My son Chandler recently introduced me to pollinator plants because he became interested in bees specifically and what they do for our environment. So I'm here with Jesse today at Tonkadale to learn more about what a pollinator plant is. And I understand, Jesse, from a brief conversation we've already had, that it's not just bees that are pollinators.
Correct.
So talk to me about what a pollinator plant is, what it does for our environment, and who exactly are these pollinators?
So pollinators are super important. They're important for the biodiversity of our natural habitats, plus they're responsible for the majority of our food sources. So, you've seen those diagrams on the internet where if pollinators and bees were eliminated, you'd be left with some lettuce and some kale or something, and there'd be nothing left for us to eat.
Like fruits and all of those kinds of things?
Pollinators are responsible for all of that. So we're not just concerned about bees, we're concerned about butterflies, hummingbirds, even bats, beetles, flies, birds, things that help move the pollen around and mix up the genetic diversity.
So that's interesting. They are basically a transport system for our pollen.
You got it. And so a lot of times we focus on kind of these key species like honeybees and monarch butterflies, which is great because paying attention to those two guys helps us to pay attention to everybody. I read a really interesting article about a year or so ago, and the author was challenging everybody to plant 25% of their own yard in garden or plants for pollinators or just something other than grass.
Any kind of garden, can it be like vegetables or anything like that? So that's actually a pretty aggressive goal for me. I am not a great gardener. So how would I get started then if I wanted to plant 25% of my yard? Could I do some containers? What would I do?
I'll let you start with 10%.
Okay, that's a good goal.
Think about when you're driving around, what you see out your window. You see roadways, you see ditches, you see boulevards, you see huge expanses of golf course, parks, etc., all planted to grass. And there's a lot of these areas that could really be, pollinator sanctuaries to help create more food and refuge for these special insects. To start small, if you're going to start small at home, the main idea is to plant clean plants. So you want to plant plants that are free of chemical residues and chemicals that are dangerous to bees and other pollinators. So you want to check with your garden center and see what kinds of things they're using, what's the efficacy of some of the chemicals they're using. Everybody's talking about neonicotinoids right now, so you want to choose your plants from a grower who's neonicotinoid free, etc.
So finding a clean plant first, inquiring if they are friendly towards pollinators.
Correct. And so what we want to do is we want to provide food sources from when winter's over, so when the pollinators, bees, and things start coming out through the end of the season. So actually one of the first food sources for bees is actually dandelions. So letting those go in some areas is a good thing. Letting your grass grow long.
That actually happens at my house.
Then you're on your way.
25%. I'm on the pollinator mission. Yes,
25%. Okay. So letting your grass grow longer actually provides some refuge for some of these bees.
And check again.
Check again. Good. There are hundreds of native bees in our state alone. So imagine, just little things can help. So we want to look at bloom time. So when are things that are blooming early in the season, middle of the season, late, and even into the fall. And so I've kind of chosen a wide variety of plants based on flower shape, flower color, and time of bloom. Okay, and these can be either annual plants that you plant every year and die when the first frost comes, or they can be perennials, plants that come back every season.
Okay.
You can also incorporate in some herbs and veggies. Those are great for pollinators too.
Oh, really? That's interesting. So I was thinking mostly when I think of pollen, I think of flowers, which I think a lot of people do. So herbs, veggies, that's all.
Yeah, like your squash and cucumbers, those things gotta cross in order to make fruits. Especially swallowtail butterflies, they love parsley and fennel. So letting those things go to flower is really awesome. This here is a container of all annuals, so things that you would plant every year. And I kind of put them in this galvanized bucket because I thought you could, plop that on your front step and enjoy those blooms all summer long.
This would be easy for someone like me.
Yeah, someone who's just starting, or they'd be like a really great gift to someone, and then they could take it apart and plant those things in the yard. You could bundle up some perennials in it.
I was going to say you could put perennials in here too.
Yeah, like a great gift or a memorial or something. So let's talk about a little bit of flower shape and who's attracted to what.
Okay.
So butterflies love flowers shaped like this. So it's a cluster of flowers kind of in a flat head. What we talk about a lot is milkweed and swamp milkweed. So these are the native nesting plants for monarchs.
Yes.
You know, the monarchs, they come up from Mexico and live in
Yes.
Minnesota, reproduce, all that life cycle stuff. So we have swamp milkweed and butterfly weed. So these
Okay.
are great for the monarch butterflies. These are pentas. They have that same shaped flower head. This is honeysuckle, and these long tubular flowers are great for hummingbirds.
Hummingbirds,
Think
yes.
about that, the way that they feed. They love catmint, and this would be for smaller bees because these flowers are smaller. So they need somewhere where they can land, open up the flower, and kind of go in. So that'd be something also like, this is Angelonia, which is
Okay.
an annual, or like snapdragons.
What is the easiest way to get started? If I were just wanting to say, again, you've given me the allowance of 10%.
Yes.
Like if I was going to say, hey, I'm going to dedicate 4 containers, what would I plant?
In containers, I would most recommend either doing herbs or annuals. So here with annuals, this is so easy. We have pentas, zinnias. Everybody knows what zinnias are.
Yes.
Salvia up top. I would say those would be kind of the top
The
3.
easiest way to get started.
Yeah, easiest way to get started in containers. If you're doing something in the ground, I mean, there's just kind of these quintessential native plants that you think of, especially in the Midwest, you know, echinacea or coneflower. That's kind of for a mid-season.
Jessie, you've given me so much information today. I can't wait to go home and get started with Chandler. But I noticed you have this book here because I'm sure I'm going to forget over half of what you told me. So talk to me about this.
Yeah, so this is Pollinators of Native Plants, and it's about all the pollinators we talked about and specific plants for those pollinators. So this is just a great, like, simple resource if you want to
It
dig deeper.
It's really in depth, and you know what? Chandler is sort of a fact collector, so I think he will have a lot of fun reading this, and he will tell me what to do to get started.
There you
So
go.
this has been so helpful. You have so much information. I would love to learn so much more, but I feel like we've got enough to get started. Chandler and I are going to do some planting, and
Yes.
thank you so much for all your help.
Sure, no problem.